Thank you very much. Yeah, as Philip was alluding to, when you agree to do these kind of presentations, you can always immediately guess that the presentation that you wrote or started writing last week is almost immediately out of date by the time that you stand up here and start talking. So these are very quickly written on the train up here. If we move on to the next slide, very quickly to introduce the REA. We are now the REA, we're not the Renewable Energy Association. We recently went for a slight rebranding exercise. The difference being that we're the Association for Renewable Energy and Clean Technologies. So we are a broader remit, and the reason we say that is that we represent everything going on in the decarbonisation sphere when it comes to power, heat and transport. So while that includes lots of renewable energy technologies, it also includes things like electric vehicles, energy storage and so forth. So we're kind of right in there at the policy side of looking at how are we decarbonising the UK economy, and how are we getting the government to provide a suitable policy environment to do that. So that's where we're coming at, and we've been been doing this since about 2001. So I've gone through quite a number of governments and policy exercises. I myself, I'm policy manager. I mainly work on our bioenergy side, very relevant to the Humber. There's lots of bioenergy here, but also have led on our Brexit work stream in relation to what we've been trying to do with government around Brexit there. Been at the RA now for about 4 years, which obviously means I've had now about 5 different energy ministers to work under what to do. If we can move on to the next slide. I thought I'd start introduce this bit by giving a bit of context to energy policy and what we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, which will also then lead into the discussion of how do we talk about energy within this coming general election, and where the different parties sit. And I might hand over to James at that point to do a bit more of that. So last 3 or 4 years, it really has been a case of energy policy going for a massive overhaul. We did have a very good set of subsidies and support mechanisms, as is the way of support mechanisms, and as they are designed to do, they have been withdrawn, some of them slowly, some of them very abruptly, and a lot of them also not having the ambition that potentially we need to meet the future decarbonisation that we need. Added into that, of course, is all the political ongoings that we've had over the last 2 to 3 years. And it has meant that there's been a certain lack of investor confidence, developer confidence within the market, which has all meant a kind of slowing down in the pipeline of projects, which has certainly been concerning. Does it mean that no projects are happening? Absolutely not. There's a huge amount going on, and all of the discussions that have been going on today have demonstrated the huge amount that is going on. But it remains the case that the investor market is not quite what it used to be, and there's an awful lot of people on hold waiting to see what happens in terms of energy policy. Now that those energy policies have come to an end, what is the next thing? How do we take it forward? The flip side of that is there is also still quite a positive message coming out of government. It doesn't matter what party you look at, it doesn't matter where you sit, and certainly this Conservative government have been trying to put a very positive pro-decarbonisation message out there. We've had a large number of strategy documents over the last 2 to 3 years. The carbon budgets are still written into law. We've had the net zero ambition, which is incredibly important earlier on this year. Added to that, as has been discussed at this conference, the transport and heat aspect of this is starting to come up the agenda, and there's been a lot more focus, which is really welcome, on how do you decarbonise these very hard to treat areas. There's cross-party support for all of this, and most importantly, there's been an awful lot, especially in the last 6 months, of strong public support for it, whether that be through what we call the Attenborough effect around plastics and recycling from Frozen Planet, and we're now seeing repeated in this new series of Attenborough TV shows, plus things like Extinction Rebellion and so forth. It does mean that climate change, environment, decarbonisation is very much in the public discussion, and despite all the Brexit discussion being there, decarbonisation is very much a key policy that all the parties are trying to focus on. We can move on to the next slide, please. A long way to go, though, and I always use this slide. Those carbon budgets I mentioned, legally binding, but still an awful long way to go. The black lines indicate where we should be hitting. This is now out of date because the CC haven't released what needs to be happened now for net zero. This is still based on the old carbon budgets. but the projected shortfall is still quite significant. And where is that projected shortfall coming from? Well, there's still quite a lot to do on the power side, although we've done a huge amount, and that should be applauded, what's happened there. But it is the heat and transport side that needs going to take a lot of focus. If you can move on to the next slide. So what is the politics of the moment, and how is that affecting it? Can't avoid the impact of Brexit. I think you can overplay the impact of Brexit. As I mentioned, there's been an awful lot of energy policy change that's happened despite Brexit, and that is all part of it. Brexit certainly exacerbated some of those issues. There are some energy-specific concerns that we've been talking with government about that we still haven't got final answers on, but we have had some reassurances. Things like the EU energy trading scheme, what is the future involvement in that? Things like the single energy market, access to EU funding, and future standards around energy applications, all still yet to be resolved, although there are some confidence that it will be resolved. But to be very honest, in terms of actual immediate effects on energy projects, it's been all the macroeconomic things that are affecting the wider economy. So it's been capital devaluation, access to skills, questions about imports and exports, all of which are common across the whole market. The snap election hasn't really helped all of this, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily made anything particularly worse. All the same questions are still there. The uncertainty is still there. And for some, of course, views vary, but for some, the fact that we haven't ended up with a no deal is also a positive, and we're looking at other areas. As already mentioned, the flip side of that is environment is now very much part of the debate within the election, and very positive that all the party, whether it be Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems, are all trying to lay out what they are going to do on environmental aspects, which is different to the 2017 election in itself. If you see some of the discussion that's happening within the Conservatives in particular, compare that to their manifesto back in 2017. While there was positive environmental messages in 2017, they still had very clear messages there saying, we don't want any more onshore wind, or we don't want any, we want to protect our fossil areas. That's a different discussion this election. So things are changing. COP26 next year is going to be a big thing happening in Glasgow, so the world's attention is going to be on what is the UK doing. So generally 2020 we can expect to be a very big year for energy policy. Of course the REA, trade body, we have been putting out our own manifesto. We spent a lot of last week trying to get this out and get this to the manifesto bodies. We've got lots and lots of asks, but very high level things that may come into the discussion and questions later, all about, number one, ensuring responsibility for the whole system change, the transformation that we are going to see is going to sit high level with the Prime Minister and within Cabinet, and ensuring there's an independent body to hold them to account to that, ensuring that Treasury is brought much more into this with a kind of net zero test for all future policy, include decarbonisation as a central mandate for the regulator, Ofgem, and look at appropriately incentivising the networks and how they're being pushed forward to ensure that they are prioritising decarbonisation. A lot of this is going to have to be done at the local level, so making sure that funds are available for local authorities to be able to implementing this across power, heat and transport. And then finally, and very important to this area and being led by this area in many ways, is that just transition, so ensuring that the energy skills, the retraining jobs and the worker transition is also actually central to the decarbonisation agenda as well. So that's kind of what we're looking for within the future manifestos as they come out. And I will leave it there.
Thank you very much, Lee.